What's going on, everybody? Payton Smith here, and in today's video we're talking about landing the big client and everything that it takes to prepare you to be the type of person or freelancer or business owner that is trustworthy enough for these big clients to write you a fat check and hire you for your services. Now for me, I offer web design and SEO services, but regardless of what industry you're in, we're gonna prepare you to be able to not only reach those big clients, but convince them that you are the person for the job. So let's get started. So over my time as a freelancer, which has been several years, I've learned a lot. First of which is I'm grateful that I'm not charging the same rates that I did 3 years ago, because I have progressively charged more and more and more. And like a snowball, things have just progressively grown bigger and bigger. The bigger clients I land, the more other big clients I get connected with, and it kind of just grows exponentially. And so that's the first thing that you need to understand is you're not going to start today and land a huge client tomorrow. Typically speaking, you have to start somewhere at a lower range, a lower rate, and then work up to the point where not only you feel confident to charge higher rates, but you can show these big clients your track record and show them that you are worth the money. And so when you are looking for big clients, that is the first thing that I would tell you is work up to it. Start charging a rate that makes it possible to land clients at the start, and then build upon that and slowly increase your prices over time until you get to the point where you're starting to command those higher rates, and then you can start saying no to those smaller budget clients, and you'll be making a lot more way down the road than you ever will be at the start of your business. Now, a huge misconception that a lot of freelancers have, particularly those in the web design space, is that the best way to find these big clients is to send cold emails and do cold calls and just try to reach out to strangers. And while this can work to find clients, and this is a great way to get the ball rolling when you start your business, what I have found is that you are almost never going to land these big clients from a cold call, because more often than not, you're going to be trying to connect with the CEO of a big company, or at least the decision maker of a big company, and it's going to be really difficult not only to find their phone number or their email, but to get them to want to respond, because typically speaking, they are outsourcing these types of decisions to their marketing team or whoever it is. And so it is going to be a lot more difficult to find these big clients if you're relying on sending a bunch of cold emails. So you need to understand that the best way to truly find these big clients and connect with them and build rapport with them is through relationships. If I look back at the last 5 biggest clients that I've landed, all of them have come from either word of mouth or through a connection with a work partner or a friend or a previous client or whatever it is. These are people that have heard about me and are listening to somebody that they trust that is referring them to me. And these types of relationships make it much easier for you to sit down and talk through their project details and everything that they need done without that added pressure of being on a cold call and them not wanting to talk to you or not trusting you or not knowing who you are. And so building relationships first is the best way to find big clients. And so if you're sitting there thinking right now, like, okay, Payton, like that sounds great to build relationships, but I don't know how to do that. And this goes back to our first point. It's going to happen slowly over time. And you can certainly accelerate this by putting in more effort, but you can't expect to start a business one day and the very next day be have tons of great connections with CEOs and business owners, because it doesn't work. You've got to prove your worth. You've got to prove that you know what you're doing. You've got to get a good track record. You've got to start building up a portfolio of results that you've gotten, because this is going to be the best way to build a reputation that is worthy of getting hired by these big clients. Now, to add to this, you need to understand that these big clients aren't going to close overnight either. Typically for me, these take days and even weeks to get to the point where we're ready to sign an agreement and start the project. In the case when you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars and even hundreds of thousands of dollars, these are not same-day decisions or even overnight decisions. And so once you make those connections and you open the discussion, you need to be patient. You need to make sure that you're keeping contact and you're being consistent in helping them through the decision-making process. But the last thing you want to do is act like you're super anxious and urgent to start this project and get paid, because that's going to show them that this is the first time you've ever done this and that you haven't dealt with these big amounts of money or with this big of a client. And so you can't act anxious. Don't act like you're in a hurry. Yes, you want to move this process along and you want to close them and show that you're serious about this, but understand that these huge decisions for these businesses typically aren't going to happen overnight. And so don't beat yourself up if you can't sign them same day. Another thing that I found is when it comes to signing these big clients, it is way easier for you to connect with them and prove that you're the right person for the job if you have other experience with other businesses in their industry. And so, for example, if a law firm reaches out to me and says, hey Payton, we've got a $10,000 budget for a website and a good budget for an SEO campaign as well, have you done this before? And can you show us what kind of results we can expect? And if this is my first law firm that I've ever spoken with, number one, I'm going to come across as if I don't know what's going on and I don't know what I'm doing, but also it's going to be really hard for me to convince them that they should hand over all this money to me if I can't show them any other results. And so again, this goes back to that first point of we have to start slow and then build up from there. And so if you've got to land a couple smaller law firms at smaller budgets to start getting a foot in the door in this industry, that's going to make it easier to charge more and more and more until you get to that point when a law firm reaches out to you and says, hey, we've got $10,000, you're going to say, great, I do this all the time. Here are the results that you can expect. Here's some other websites that I've built within this budget range, and it's going to make it much, much easier to build trust and rapport with that potential client. And so having experience in a specific niche is really going to help with that. And so oftentimes you'll hear me say that you don't necessarily need to pick a specific niche at the start of your business, but it certainly is going to help to stick within industries that you have done a lot of work in before. And so if you find yourself starting to do a lot of websites with pest control companies or with accountants, you can focus in on those industries, because as you build your expertise there in that arena, it's going to be much, much easier to raise your prices and have a great track record of working with those types of businesses. So when it comes down to helping a big client through the decision-making process and actually getting them to sign an agreement and pay you, it really just comes down to your confidence and how sure you are in your abilities and in the results you can get for the clients. And so, for example, a current client that I'm working through this process with will have a really great call, and I'll reassure them and I'll help them feel really good about working with me. And then a day goes by and all of a sudden all of these concerns arise and they'll come back to me with questions, and I have to be confident in answering those questions and telling them, absolutely, this is going to be okay. We know what we're doing. We know exactly how to run your ads or run this SEO campaign, or we know exactly what your new website needs in order to increase conversions or increase your ranking or whatever it is. You have to be really confident knowing that once you sign this big client, once you convince them and make promises to them, that you are going to be able to deliver. Because if you can't deliver, first off, it's going to be really difficult for you to get great case studies and references, but at the same time, they're going to notice if you have any sort of self-doubt in your abilities. They're going to sense that, they're going to get scared, and they're going to end up not signing that agreement. So go in and be confident, but also do whatever you need to do to build that confidence, whether that is working with other smaller budget clients and then building up from there, or just honing in your skills and educating yourself on everything that it takes to be successful and get results. If you can be confident, you will be able to land those big clients. Now, aside from what we've talked about so far, there are a couple things that I will do slightly differently than I traditionally would with a smaller client. And in a lot of my videos, I'll tell you, don't write out custom proposals, don't prepare presentations, don't do all these things that are just huge time wasters that typically result in lost time and really no sort of results or no new clients. And so I feel like when it comes to these bigger clients, you have to weigh your opportunity costs. And if you've got a client that's ready to pay you $100,000, it might be worth taking an hour or two and creating a presentation or a custom proposal or whatever it takes to show them that you're willing to put in the effort to earn their business. Now, again, I never recommend doing this for every single client because you're going to spend all day long creating these custom proposals that never get open. But if you have a big client that is a really good prospect, that they're really interested, genuinely interested, and you know that they're going to take the time with you to go through a presentation or a custom proposal, take the time. This is something that I've done recently where I actually went through and I even created a kind of a wireframe of a homepage. I've never done this before, and I always tell people don't do this because it wastes your time. But I looked at this and I said, with how big this client is, it's certainly worth me going the extra mile to show them really what a potential website could look like if we work together. And I feel like that was something that was endearing to them because they saw that I was doing the extra work to show them that I wanted to work with them. So to go back to that slow progression of building up your business and your confidence, you need to understand that you can't raise your prices overnight, okay? You're not gonna be able to sell your first website for $200 and sell your second website for $20,000. And the reason for this is you haven't learned to provide $20,000 worth of value. That's just the way that it is. When I first started, my websites were worth about $800 because that was what my expertise delivered. At this point, I feel strongly that I can sell a website for $20,000 or $80,000 because I've built a team around myself and I know how to provide that value, and I'm getting a better idea of just what kind of results these clients can expect from a new website. And so don't try to raise your prices overnight because you're just going to find very quickly that people aren't going to bite on it. They're not going to sign up and they're not going to pay you because there is going to be some self-doubt there. And so raise your prices slowly. I think it's a safe bet to raise your prices maybe $500 to $1,000 every project, and over time you're going to learn to provide more value and justify those bigger prices. Now, to go along with that, even though I wouldn't recommend raising your prices overnight, the other thing that you need to know is don't let your lack of experience or self-doubt let you think that you can't deliver on a project, because the fact of the matter is, more often than not, it comes down to your effort and how much time you're willing to invest in this. If you've got a client that comes to you and says, I need X, Y, and Z, and you're not sure how to do Z, that's okay. If you're willing to spend the time to learn that and master that and deliver that to them, say yes to the project. Obviously, you always want to deliver what they're expecting, but even if there are things that you don't have the expertise or you don't know exactly how it works yet, if you are willing to invest the time and either find out how it works to deliver that result or whatever it is they want, or if you're willing to hire somebody else and bring them in to help you, as long as the job gets done, you shouldn't let those types of things make you hesitate or change your mind about accepting a new project, because sometimes we just have to say yes and we have to get the job done some way, somehow. And so don't let your self-doubt hold you up. And if you have somebody that comes to you tomorrow and says, hey, I want to sign you for a $10,000 website, and you've only ever built a $1,000 website, say yes, act confident, be sure that no matter what, you're going to be able to get the job done. And if there are things that you don't know how to do, that's okay, because you're going to learn it. So now that we've talked about all of these different things that are going to help you find new big clients and then close them, there are a couple additional things that you need to know that are going to reduce the friction through this whole process and are going to make it much, much easier for you to put these big clients at ease and get them to feel comfortable to sign your agreement, pay you, and then go through this entire project with you. So a couple of these things are, you want to make sure that you have a clean and trustworthy way to collect payment, okay? If a client comes to you and they are ready to work with you, and then they say, okay, how do I pay? And you say, you can pay however, if you want to like write me a check, or maybe you can like shoot me a PayPal. And if you don't have a surefire way to send them an invoice that looks very official and has your logo on it and gives them different payment options, if you don't have a smooth process, they're immediately going to say, I don't really feel comfortable shooting you $4,000 via PayPal when I don't know who you are and I don't have any sort of documentation. And so I like to use a service called Hello Bonsai, which allows me to send out and track invoices and allows me to collect payments through credit card or bank transfer or PayPal or check or whatever it is. So I would just really encourage you to have a very streamlined process to get this done and to collect these payments. The next thing that you're going to want is a clean onboarding process. And this can be something as simple as a couple of canned response emails that you're going to send out once somebody signs up. And so when they sign your agreement, which again is something you can do in any of these invoicing softwares, but you're going to want to have a welcome email to send them saying, I'm looking forward to working with you. And you're going to want to have a second email that gets sent to them that says, here is what you can expect. Here is the process. Here is when we're going to be sending you a content outline, and here is the date of our first revision call. If you can show people that once they've paid, there's actually some sort of feedback or something that comes after that, you're going to put them at ease. And I remember countless times when I first started my business that people would give me a deposit, typically like a 50% deposit up front, and then they wouldn't hear from me for like a day. And I would get this really panicked email and they're like, hey, I just want to make sure that you didn't like disappear after I paid you. And so people are expecting that immediate response once they do sign and pay. And that is true throughout this entire process. Make sure that you're maintaining contact, that you're reassuring them at every turn, because if you can do that, they're going to be more willing to not only accept your project or the results, but they're going to be really, really thrilled about the opportunity to work with you, and in turn, they're going to refer you to their friends and family. The next thing that's really important is you don't want to oversell, and this is something that I would say is still something that I struggle with, because it's really easy when you're trying to land a big agreement to make these crazy big promises that you're not really sure that you can deliver. And so you've always heard me say this, but you want to make sure that you under-promise and over-deliver. And really the way that they feel about the project at the end is going to come down to how well you set expectations at the beginning. And so don't make crazy promises. Don't promise more than you can deliver. Set really good expectations. You're going to want to let them know if there is something that can't be done or can't be accomplished, or if their timeline is not realistic or reasonable. Don't just say yes because you want to land the project, because landing the project is not going to matter if you get 3 weeks in and they're incredibly disappointed with you and they're trying to fire you and cancel their agreement, and it is a very messy process. And so what you're going to want to do instead is set great expectations, be very upfront with them, and going into an agreement, especially a big agreement that's dealing with big amounts of money, your client should know exactly who you are. You should know exactly who they are. You should both have expectations, realistic expectations about one another. And if you can go into these big projects with those types of expectations and with the bar set at a reasonable height, it is going to be much easier to deliver a result or a product that they're happy with, that they approve, and you're going to get paid and everybody's going to be happy. So set realistic expectations from the start, put those in your agreement, and then try your best to exceed those expectations, and everything will be just fine. Now, the last thing that I want to cover with you guys is undercharging for your services. Now, we've talked about starting at a low rate and building up from there, but the other thing that we need to be weary of is if you're working with, let's just say, a multi-million-dollar company, and they come to you and they say, I need a big website to generate tens of thousands of site visitors every month. We're going to be selling hundreds of thousands of dollars of items or equipment or products or whatever it is, and they have these huge expectations or hopes for this website, and then you come back and you say, yeah, we could accomplish all of that. We can help you make millions of dollars, and the website's only going to cost you $5,000. And the first thing they're going to say is, that doesn't make sense, and that seems fishy, and I'm not sure if I trust a website that only costs $5,000 to accomplish these million-dollar goals. And so you need to take that into account when you're meeting these clients and getting a feel for how big they are and what goals they want to accomplish and what their expectations are, because I've almost lost clients from undercharging. And so you need to go confidently in, and if there's a business that has these multi-million-dollar goals, you should at least be charging $100,000 for that website. If you charge any less than that, they're going to be wondering what's the hitch or what's the problem with you, or if they're not getting as much value as they're looking for. And so the same goes for web design services as it does for SEO services or ad services or whatever it is. Make sure that you're charging enough that people respect your expertise and they know that if they're paying for this, they're getting a top-notch service. So now that we've covered all of this, I'm very curious to find out down below in the comments, What is a big client to you? Is $5,000 a big client? Is $100,000 a big client? Maybe share with us down below what's the biggest client that you've ever signed, because I would love to get a feel for exactly where you are all at and what we can do in our next video to help you reach that next level of being able to charge even more and reach that next level of big client. So that's it for this video. I hope that these tips have helped prepare you and help you feel more confident in your skills and your expertise in going into a phone call or a meeting with these big clients and looking them in the eyes and saying, I am the guy or the girl for the job. And if you can do this, I promise you that you are going to elevate your vision. And if today a big client to you is $10,000, my hope is that next month a big client for you is $30,000, and so on and so forth. And my hope is that, very similar to me, you'll be able to see a consistent progression until you get to the point where you truly are commanding really high rates, but even more importantly, you're delivering so much value that nobody bats an eye to pay you hundreds of thousands of dollars for your expertise and your services. So I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll catch you all in the next one.